This question is from Cassandra. She asked, as a brand new small business, more like a side hustle, what is the most important, the one thing to do first? First of all, I appreciate the Lord of the Rings reference. I'm not sure if it was because I've worked with the company that made the One Ring for the movies or not, but anyway, it was a good reference. So my answer is based on the assumption that you already have at least an idea of what you're going to be selling, some general idea of it. You don't have to have a very specific idea, but at least a general sense. So if you're still thinking of which industry to go in and so on, then you do need to figure that out first. But once you have that much, then there's this like a triangle that's on the bottom of all marketing you do. If you don't do all the three different things in this triangle well, then you will be stuck in this situation where your marketing is about convincing people to want something or buy something that they don't really want. And it's not like you can't do that, it's just very ineffective, it's very difficult, and overall it can get a little questionable. So the triangle is made up of your target customer, so who are the people you're trying to sell to, then your offer, as in what is it that you're selling, and then the tip of the triangle is your message, as in what you need people to see or what you need to show them so that they want to buy. Target customer is one of those things that almost everyone has done many exercises about, or at least it's very likely that you've done all sorts of exercises about buyer personas or customer avatars and such. And all of those things can be useful, but in this context, most of the usual target customer stuff just doesn't really make any difference. So things like company size or industry or their hobbies or job titles or family size or such things, most of the time those things just don't really make that big of a difference. Instead, we're interested in things that affect how they perceive what you're offering them. What is their perspective to what you sell? The usual target customer stuff is things that, how do we describe them? Whereas what's more impactful in this context is how do they describe us, or how do they think of us and what we're selling? The offer part, which is, what you sell to people, it's not just about making it better or making it more valuable. That's really good too, and you should obviously do that. But what this is just as much about is making the offer one that your target customers really, really want. So it can be things like guarantees or bonuses or support or payment terms or what sort of services you put into it. How do you deliver the product or service? All sorts of things that not necessarily, they don't have to make the offer any better, as in more valuable objectively, but they make it somehow more desirable, easier for your target customers to decide to buy. When you're done with those, then you know who's most likely to buy, and you have something that's really inherently desirable for them. And that makes the next step way easier. That's creating a strong marketing message. And I mean specifically figuring out what exactly you need to say to them, or what you need to show them, or what you need them to understand about your offer so that they want to buy it. And it doesn't mean that it's an exhaustive list of everything you need to tell them, but rather what are the most impactful things. Because you need to start with something, and if you start with something that's relatively meaningless, or at least not nearly as impactful as something else, you're losing the opportunity of making a bigger impact, and usually people don't pay enough attention for you to be able to give them a long list. So creating a marketing message is about figuring out what are the most important things. And it's not just a couple of words or a few words. It's not this simplistic branding idea. Nothing wrong with that either, but it's a different thing. The marketing message is really about what are the thoughts you need them to understand so that they are most likely to want to buy. In the next video, I actually talk specifically about the messaging. There was a good question about a very common thing that people run into, a very common issue, and how you can solve it in many different ways. What sort of options you have so you can pick one that fits you. If you want to see that, remember to subscribe. The point here is that you do the entire triangle. You do all three things before basically anything else. As long as you haven't done all three things fairly well, everything else is going to be really hard. So if you try to build a website or do email marketing or advertising or write blog content and such, you can do all those things and you can fiddle with all of those and have fun with it if you want. But you can't really expect very good results because you're either talking to the wrong people who are not very likely to buy what you're offering them, or you're offering them something they are not really interested in buying, or something that you really have to convince them to want to buy instead of it being inherently desirable. Or you don't know what you need to show them or say to them so that they buy. And when you don't have all those, it's going to be really, really hard to get good results. And the thing is that most businesses never go through all these things very well. The more established the business, the better they're doing, the more they've had to put effort into this, or the more lucky they've had to get so that these things have aligned. But a lot of businesses just never really put a lot of effort into it, or they might even try to skip some of the steps. They might never really think through what they're selling, anything beyond, well, this is a good product, as in it does what it's promised to do, which can be enough, but it's often not, it doesn't make things as easy as it could. When I talk with clients and go through what's actually been holding them back, what are the problems that they haven't yet solved, usually it comes down to these things. And I mean, most of my clients are marketing experts, so it's not that they wouldn't know that these are important things. It's not that they wouldn't even know exactly how to do this for other people. The problem is it's very difficult to do these things for your own business, because if you don't have either someone there to help you or really good instructions to follow, it's really hard to get that outside perspective, or get that your target customer's perspective, to see how they see what you're doing in a way that helps you see what exactly you need to then offer them and how to describe it so that they want to buy. So even if you've done some exercises, it's still worth going through it again and just really think through, are all of these things really nailed down? If you're not certain that you've done them well, then just try again. Check that you haven't made any assumptions that are not right. Check that it doesn't ever feel like where you're just talking to people who don't understand that this is important, or you're talking to people who you have to convince really, really much before they are like, well, okay, I will now buy this. You've convinced me it is worth it. If that ever happens, that's usually a bad sign. It usually means that you're not going after target customers who would just much more easily buy. I'm not saying it's always the case. Sometimes it is that, but most of the time you can find target customers who are much more easily convinced by your offer. So if you're in the early stages of business, otherwise too, but especially if you're not really making very consistent sales or a lot of profit yet, then start from these: the target customer and your desirable offer and your marketing message. If you want a bit of help with marketing message especially, you can get this 2-page free PDF that's sort of a test for figuring out how good your current ideas are, how likely they are to make people want to buy. You can download from the link in the description. But in the next video, we talk specifically about the messaging stuff. So if you want to see that, remember to subscribe. We go through one of the most common issues. And specifically, there's a question about a very normal and common and basically good structure for describing what you do, something that can work, but there was specifically the most common issue people fall for, and we'll look at the different solutions to it. If you thought this video was useful, if it gave you any interesting thoughts or something, click the like button. Think of it as a small thank you, and it really helps me, so I appreciate it. And if you have any questions related to this or any other marketing topic, just leave a comment. I'm going to make many more videos, and I'll mostly do it based on what people are asking about. And also, if you just want to share your thoughts about this, I am curious to hear how you're seeing this, and if you think that some other things are more important, or overall, just have a conversation about it. In any case, I'll see you in the next video.